Dissension in the ranks. That's what I hear. That Thomas Massie is rejecting the continuing resolution. He wants real action on the budget. Lucas, I heard you're just posting on social media like you never have before, and it sounds like the world, at least on X, is falling on the side of Thomas Massie. Fill us in on what's happening here.
Dissension is absolutely right. That's a great that's some chutzpah to start this out with. I don't know that I've ever posted so in so many MAGA threads in my short tenure on Twitter or on X. Last night I saw that Donald Trump had tweeted a call for Thomas Massie to be primaried. And the call for Thomas Massie to be primaried was in response to Thomas Massie's staunch standing his ground that he would not be voting for the continuing resolution. And
say it ain't so. Thomas Massie is one of our favorites, right? I mean, he's like the pro-liberty, like has been the strong defender in all things. He's been a rock, right?
Absolutely. Thomas Massie is the congressman from Kentucky who he was interviewed on Tucker Carlson. I don't know if you caught that earlier this year. That brought him to the attention of more people. I've long been impressed with him because he stands his ground, very principled, makes great arguments, eloquent. I don't agree with him on all issues. He might be a bit more of a federalist than me. Maybe he just deals with, and I'm an anti-federalist, as you well know. But maybe he's dealing with some of the realities of Congress. But he has not backed down with regards to calls for the United States to address the national debt. That is his stump. That is what his defining issue is about the United States debt and how out of hand it is. And so even in like the lead up to the continuing resolution, this is by the way his campaign account. If let me send you his on his regular account, you can see that he had a thread that Donald Trump may have responded to with his quote tweet, or maybe not, but was essentially laying out the politics behind these continuing resolutions and how Congress continues to punt and pick, some sort of goalpost in the future. Oh, after the inauguration, well, let's get through Christmas. Okay, let's get through the inauguration. Oh, well, we got to get through the spring. We gotta give the administration time to make these changes. So we're going to pass another continuing resolution. And back whenever the continuing resolution came to a head, leading into the election, when Democrats were in control and said, hey, let's punt this after the election, Thomas Massie said, this is this is the charade that we go through every time. And
what makes Kentucky the hotbed of these libertarian politics within the Republican Party? Because Rand Paul is from Kentucky, right? So there's got to be something in the water there.
I don't know what's in the water there. Mitch McConnell, who is retiring, and Thomas Massie tweeted a couple of weeks ago. He said, "Should I run for governor or should I run for Mitch McConnell's seat?" But Mitch McConnell has had a massive amount of power, and he is also from Kentucky. I have wondered exactly that. I don't know. Kentucky. When I think about Kentucky, I feel like it's a left behind state. Maybe it's and when I say left behind,
Kentucky was coal mining, right? Wasn't it? Isn't that their thing?
I don't know how much coal, like probably coal mining in the eastern half of Kentucky. It is part of, it's part of Appalachia. It has horse racing. It has horses. I've been to Louisville, and beautiful. I mean,
Yep, I remembered correctly. Kentucky has been a rock of coal mining for 2 centuries. So yes,
oh,
coal mine.
okay.
Kentucky.
Well, I thought that was West Virginia, but they maybe they're neighbors.
I think you're thinking of the John Denver song.
Don't try to mollify me when Trump is attacking Thomas Massie.
That's right. We got to stay on topic.
So yeah, I could not believe that Trump would make such a gaffe as to attack Thomas Massie. I mean, Thomas Massie also, let's go back to the election and remember that Donald Trump was carried maybe in some part by Amish turning out to vote in Pennsylvania, and the Amish were turning out to vote in the wake of having the state shut down some of their agriculture, their raw milk and some farm to table grocery stores that they had. So and it's also important to know that one of Thomas Massie's side issues is raw milk, and he lives on a farm in Kentucky that is he joined a farm. You know how farms go. You build another house and you live next to your grandparents and your parents. And he and his wife did that on his wife's family farm, um, and built the house by hand. I don't know how much you know about Thomas Massie, but he also went to MIT. He invented some. He's a brain chad. He invented something. He and his wife sold the company and his wife also went to MIT, but they were high school sweethearts. Great American story. And this is who Donald Trump chose to attack. The stalwart fighter and like leader in the wake of Ron Paul. Maybe Rand Paul still carries some of that, but Thomas Massie has been much more vocal. Is in the House, has brought legislation to end the Fed repeatedly. Even tax on tips. I think Donald Trump may have picked that up from Thomas Massie. So that he chose.
I wonder if there's a plate of crow that's going to be eaten one of these days for this fight that he's picking here. Do you think that he'll end up relenting on this, or do you think he's just going to double down on this? It seems like not the kind of thing to go to war over.
It's definitely not the thing to go to war over. This is a terrible play by Donald Trump. Why? So again, why would he pick a fight with Thomas Massie? Maybe the fight that he has to pick, Thomas Massie, another defining characteristic is that he's taken no money from AIPAC. And in his interview with Tucker Carlson, he talked about how every other congressman takes money from AIPAC, which is the American Israel lobby group, and he talked about how this was a problem, and that this could be at the root, because we know that Donald Trump is very engaged in Israel politics. He had Benjamin Netanyahu at Mar-a-Lago whenever he was running. So that could be what is at a deeper issue here, because we also look at Donald Trump's cabinet, and it seems that support for Israel has been a requirement for consideration for joining his cabinet, and Thomas Massie has questioned dual citizenship. He has questioned as to why AIPAC, if it's lobbying for Israel's interests, does not have to register under the Foreign Agent Registration Act, or FARA. So this could be what is maybe impelled or compelled Trump to to attack Thomas Massie. I'm not sure, but ostensibly it's about the debt fight, and it's about funding the government to continue to fund some of the changes that Donald Trump is making. I mean, some of the Republicans are arguing that that the government needs to continue to be funded for Doge to continue to operate. I don't understand that. If in the wake of the revelations from Doge, Republicans in Congress authorize that spending, then what is the impact of Doge? They will be patted on the head and and forgotten to history.
It almost seems like that's happening already. It seems like it's already been defanged, if it ever had any fangs, that it's being abandoned. Trump said they don't have the authority to fire anybody. I almost feel like this is being walked back on, like the first week in operation, seems like to me.
I haven't heard Trump say that. The Supreme Court ruled, um, uh, the Supreme
I,
Court
I think I
ruled.
think I think he did. Let me see if I can find it, but keep going.
See if you can find it. In the Supreme Court issued a ruling recently that that the executive could not withhold funding that was approved by Congress. Now, I thought that was interesting because how is the Supreme Court going to enforce that? So that's not something. That's not a subject that um, that a more cautious court would have picked up or tested. And Samuel Alito was scathing in his dissent, and it may have brought the Supreme Court to a lower threshold of approval.
Okay,
Or
maybe it wasn't Trump, but it came out of the White House. So not sure exactly what that means. Like, didn't come out of the president's mouth directly, but definitely coming from press secretary, who I think is supposedly speaking with the voice of the president, right?
Absolutely. Caroline Leavitt is certainly the voice of the president, very in line with the Trump administration. So, but here, when I see this statement, I see this as addressing the concerns from the left about the authority of Doge, and what they're saying here is Doge isn't firing people; it's making recommendations and it's revealing information, and then the the firings are coming through the power and the chain of power and the hierarchy of the bureaucratic institutions. So, Doge is taking a look at what information they found through the treasury records and the payment records and other information that they've crunched through their big data AI capturing, etc. And and they are compiling and condensing that information, then turning around and giving that back to the various agencies, and the heads of those agencies are taking information that they might not have had otherwise. And you can imagine the compartmentalization and maybe withholding of information from people down the bureaucratic chain. So
And
I
so
think that.
Massey is clearly falling on the side of we need to continue on this. We need to try to really rein in government spending, and he's not going to stop that message. And that's where the fight ultimately comes down to, is the continuing resolution really doesn't make any changes. And Massey is saying we have the votes. Let's make the changes now.
Well, so the vote for continuing resolution requires 50 votes. The vote to pass a budget requires 60 votes. And this is where the Republicans are saying you're going to force a shutdown. It's going to be a black eye for the Republicans because the Republicans are in power. You're playing into the hands of the Democrats because they will turn around and cry that the Republicans are not playing ball, and the Republicans, while in power, have shut down the government. But meanwhile, like going back to the Supreme Court ruling about the executive's power or authority to deny what Congress to withhold spending that's or withhold money that's been approved by Congress to be spent. Thomas Massie's taking a look at the larger game and saying, the Supreme Court has issued a ruling. In part, they're right. It is the responsibility of Congress to make these decisions. If not now, when are we going to address our budget overruns? When should we not be honoring the information that the Department of Government Efficiency has given to us, to use the support in the broader American electorate right now to address these issues? And I think he's 100% right. If Donald Trump passes this, or convinces Congress to pass the continuing resolution, the Republicans, I think, will lose a great deal of momentum that they have gained. And so they should be playing hardball right now. And they should be steeling themselves for claims by the Democrats that they are holding up government. They should be readying a response that says, we found out all of this spending. America does not approve of it. America does not support it. We need to balance the budget. We are in debt, and we need to take care of that right now. So, but I guess Trump doesn't think that he is strong enough to make that case. But the second thing about this that blows my mind is that if that is the logic behind the Trump administration right now, then carrying this forward, he should not have attacked Thomas Massie. He should have given Thomas Massie a compliment sandwich and said, I love that Thomas Massie is holding true to the cause. But he could have spun it in any direction. He could have said, but Democrats don't support it, and we need to work with Democrats too. Or he could have thrown Democrats under the bus and prepared for the possibility of a government shutdown and said, well, Democrats aren't working with us, but Thomas Massie is the truest to the cause. For him to so openly throw Thomas Massie under the bus was an incredible mistake, because scroll through the tweets and down through the comments on anyone who's taking a measure of MAGA and the public support on Twitter, and you're going to find that by and large, most of them say, I like Donald Trump, but Thomas Massie, I like Thomas Massie, but Thomas Massie is right. And I support Thomas Massie in this fight. And Thomas Massie is more MAGA and more America first than Donald Trump. So Donald Trump should be in damage control mode right now and addressing this as soon as possible.
I mean, just from scrolling through this thread, you can definitely see it. There's a lot of people standing up for Thomas Massie. So this is interesting. We're just barely into the Trump administration, and we have a fight within the party. I actually like this. I view this as a very positive kind of thing. I don't like that Trump attacked Thomas Massie necessarily, but having disagreements within the party and then the resolution around it, like this is good. There needs to be dialogue. It's not good if we just railroad through a bunch of stuff with a bunch of yes men. Like it's important for everybody to have thoughtful dialogue. I hope this can be thoughtful dialogue, and that the damage control can be spun to I spoke too hastily, something like that. Let's have a real discussion about how we can rein in spending or something like that. Hopefully this can get turned to something positive.
Well, I think at the very least, this has been a breakout of attention and support for Thomas Massie. He's grown in stature and recognition. In COVID, I think he was the only congressman who voted against COVID, and also in the face of the how do I put this? I don't know, the science that was being thrown around. Thomas Massie was like, science? I I have a PhD in science from MIT. I invented it may have been some medical device or etc. He said this doesn't add up. Some of these things do not add up. And at the very least, they are calling into question American liberty and ideals that were enshrined in the Constitution. And we should be thinking about that. And he's been borne out to be right about like very much so, as we've discovered more and more about concerns that the government had about COVID that they weren't sharing with the American public. And furthermore, going back to his deepest concern being about American debt. And I don't know if you've seen the digital debt meters that he gives out to congressmen, but he wears on his lapel a little black box that keeps track of the American debt, to remind everybody and to keep that issue at the forefront with every conversation that he's having, because he said it's something that it's the most important issue that Congress should be confronting. And he's absolutely right. Congress should not be blaming the Federal Reserve or blaming the stock market or blaming China about debt. Debt is what Congress prints whenever it can't make difficult decisions about cutting the budget and where cuts are going to occur. And so here he is forcing that issue, and I think he will be borne out to be right, even at the cost of shutting down the government. He's he's gonna he's gonna be born to be right. And not only that, like I've seen Thomas Massie for president over and over in these threads, and if Thomas Massie took the route of H. Ross Perot, or Bernie Sanders, or Bobby Kennedy, we have seen a groundswell or rising support for third party candidates. And he's there's also a picture of him and his family with a Christmas card where they're all holding guns. So I don't know how quickly the left is going to line up and support him, but he's not a he is a thoughtful and principled member of Congress. I've also been impressed that, like, Thomas Massie gets along with, even, like, I would say almost he gets along with and is respected seemingly by many other members of Congress. I've seen him in discussions and both in House hearings and also in the halls of Congress, in videos that are shared, etc., with with as many Democrats as Republicans. And I lived in an area with a very left congressman, and I actually tweeted him. I said, "What do you think of my congressman?" He said, "I get along with her great. We work together on many issues." And I was impressed by that, because I've never heard Thomas Massie disparage or insult another member of Congress. He doesn't yell at them. He doesn't get angry with them. He stays focused on what he thinks is wrong with the country, with the problems with debt, with some of the regulations that don't take into account smaller businesses, smaller producers, small farms. And he tries to take that case to everybody, regardless of where they're coming from, as if he lived in Boston for a long time, but yet grew up in Kentucky. So I think he's incredibly impressive. He also is a great communicator. We've seen more politicians begin to break out based not on assumptions that are made about their policies or what their contacts are, but how well they communicate through the more diverse tools of communication that we have, social media, sharing videos, appearing on the likes of Tucker Carlson and other long form podcasts. Thomas Massie does all of that very well. So as we see more and more attention driven to him, it will also be interesting to see if the left begins to take him under their wing, if Donald Trump is taking a fight, is if Donald Trump is picking a fight with him. So I don't know. It's a big day in politics, and hopefully we will see at the very least Thomas Massie continue to gain in stature. But
Do you think
certainly,
that the divide cleanly falls into the what I have said is the traditional division within the Republican Party? Like, where do we see the lines of division as far as who's supporting Massey? Is this more the libertarian side that was canonically Tea Party? Is this the centrists, or is it a mix? And it's like just a lot of people like Massey, and do you see any sort of grouping, like how the people who are against Massey, like what is their political leaning and affiliation?
I don't know if Massey is on the radar of those who might be against him, except for maybe the gun issue. So when it comes to politics, especially at the national level, I'm often like sifting not so much whether they are Republican or Democrat, but whether they look to solve problems based on foreign policy or domestic policy. And so many people who go to Congress want to solve America's problems through foreign policy because it's no cost to Americans. And Thomas Massie has held true to, we have to take care of domestic policy before foreign policy, because if we are if we are solely, like paying for America, or exporting all of our problems outside of America because we can't solve our problems here, then that has a reputational cost, and a cost in the standard of living, and to the values of Americans. So that I see that more, and I see very few politicians who hold the line on domestic policy. So and that I don't like to put in terms of, are they globalists or are they America first? Because you can be both and still exporting. You can either be blaming the globalists or saying, uh, let's be powerful and take advantage of other countries of the world, and that'll solve our problems. Or it's China's fault, and it's everybody else's fault what America's problem, but you're still avoiding the domestic issue. Thomas Massie does not take that route. When people say those, he says, oh, that's well and good, but you know we are, like these American empire is coming at the cost of printing trillions of dollars of debt. And that is a domestic policy. And that is a policy that is not dictated by China, by Great Britain, by Israel, by anybody else. That is dictated by American congressmen. And we need to solve this issue. And what does the problem look like? It looks like continuing resolutions and kicking the can down the road, and kicking the can to the next election, and then saying, oh, this was somebody else's fault. This was the globalists' fault, or um, uh, this was this was not enough America first. Either way. So I the closest that I see to in congressman to Thomas Massie, or Tim Burchett, in the Senate, Rand Paul, but and maybe John Kennedy from Louisiana, but there are very few politicians who are willing to talk about what the gives and takes are going to be in America. Instead, many of them want to solve our issues by trade or defense outside the country.
So looking ahead to like how you think this is going to shape up, So we're definitely having a conversation about the continuing resolution. This is going to come up before Congress. Is it happening this week, today? Do you have a sense of when they're actually going to take this up? And as far as how this is looking, do you have a sense of that they're probably going to pass this, right? So even though he's being vocal about not wanting it passed, it's likely that it's going to go through, isn't it?
Well, there's a pretty slim majority, and Chip Roy and Tim Burchett, if Thomas Massie can convince a couple members of the Freedom Caucus, maybe even Lauren Boebert. I don't always love Lauren Boebert, but there are some, maybe Marjorie Taylor Greene. There, it wouldn't take too many congressmen to be able to kill the continuing resolution. And we saw some of this. We saw some of this come forward in the number of the the election of Mike, what eventually would be Mike Johnson for Speaker of the House. Like the Republicans are very split. And again, between these camps, so some people say Rhino, some people say MAGA. Some congressmen have put on the hat of MAGA and reached for Trump's coattails, but uh, where the rubber meets the road is at this budget fight. And so, um, again, turning where all of these representatives are going to turn is to what their constituency is saying. And if they're going to buck their constituency, they're going to be making calculations like, how long is it until I'm up for reelection? And what can I get in alliances from other politicians for this? Can I get some pork and an alliance uh, if I'm going to support this continuing resolution, so I can turn around to my constituency and say, we went over budget, but I got these projects approved for us. So this is the good that I did for. This is what the good that I did for, you know, uh, El Paso or whatever district that I'm in. Um, so I don't know. I don't know. Before Trump made this tweet against Thomas Massie, I would have said a lot of them, a lot of congressmen would have voted for a continuing resolution and hoped that they could, plead allegiance to the president, or some sort of equanimity with Democrats and funding the government and figuring things out in the future. But as this has gained in awareness, who knows how it will play out. Um, I don't have a lot of hopes for the government actually balancing the budget, but
I
but it
wonder if any of these strange bedfellows that we've seen, like how we saw AOC and Anna Paulina Luna have teamed up on an issue, if there will be any sort of crossing of the aisle. If I've ever seen a Congress that had more opportunity for a weird mix to get things done. I think it's this Congress because of the division that exists within the Republican Party and within the Democratic Party, that we almost have more free agents and the ability for like this kind of stuff to happen. I mean, yes, we've had very like hard aligning within the parties, but then you see these other parts where you see some bipartisan things happening here, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of this occurred. I don't know if it's going to happen for the continuing resolution particularly, because I would bet that the Republicans want to pass this, but then wouldn't the Democrats want to see the government continue to operate? Are they gonna vote against that? And like, what would that vote against the continuing resolution really mean? That they're supporting a government shutdown like that? I don't know. That'd be a weird play. It's going to be a weird vote.
well, I agree too. We also have to remember that the Democratic Party um, is looking for a new direction, is looking for new leadership, is grappling with the party leadership alignment with the likes of Liz Cheney and I'm after Trump's State of the Union, I couldn't believe that the person who was chosen to respond, I think she was from Minnesota, by the way. She was from Minnesota or Michigan. That she led with her security credentials. And I don't think that's what the Democratic base is most impressed with. So I think the Democratic base is also very leery of the assumption of power that the Trump administration has taken on, and that Republicans are predisposed to. Again, I harp on the foundations of the Republican Party and how the Republican Party was made to use the power of the federal government to subvert the will of the states. And that's not the narrative that it carries forward, but that is certainly how it operates. And I knew that the Republican Party would I mean, look at the Republican the DOJ, the Trump campaign and the Republicans promised all of this all of these changes in the Department of Justice, and yet they've turned around and incarcerated the leader of the Columbia University protests. I forget what his name is, but they've put him in detention in Louisiana, and are trying to expel him from the country, to strip him of his I don't know what sort of resident status that he has for being a student here, but they've run with the line that leading a protest was a terrorist act, and that he was supporting terrorists. And I think Democrats are going to be most turned off by actions like that. And so if they can sort of return to their values of, and again, Democrats are about state power, and if they return to those values of I don't know, democracy, personal autonomy, et cetera, then they might. I just see it problematic for them joining Thomas Massie because of his like Second Amendment. But again, we could see a great pivot with Democrats and their understanding of the Second Amendment if the federal government continues to like turns from residents to citizens and says, "Oh, you said something against Israel. That's our great ally. It's terrorism to say these things. That was anti-Semitic. We're going to put you in jail."
They've been cutting funding too, so I think there are universities and whatever that are getting their funding cut. I can't remember exactly which one, but there's one that was recent that lost their funding because they said that they allowed too much protesting in support of Palestine. So this is a disturbing trend. I don't like this. This is not America, in my opinion.
Well, I think that's a great gaffe in their part, because the federal government has so much power through universities. But I also don't like to see. I would rather see universities like more over in the private sector, or more directly funded through the government. It may have been the University of Chicago, by the way, that you're thinking of, but I think it's quite a few universities. It may have been one in California too, Cal Berkeley.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that the federal government is kind of flexing on. So it's this one with respect to anti-Semitism, and then also DEI. So there's a couple of avenues that the federal government is using to try to control what is happening in various places within the United States with respect to the different types of practices or speech. And this is personally distasteful to me. I don't like it. I think that people should be allowed to have whatever hiring practices they want. I don't know that it should necessarily be supported or like specially funded, but like some of this seems a little outside the bounds of what we ought to be doing, but that's just my opinion.
Well, I agree. I think the Republicans crossed a line whenever they moved from cutting funding um, to arresting someone for their speech, and that person was a resident rather than a citizen. That's not going to carry a lot of water in the minds of most Americans.
Agreed.
I've already seen, I've seen Candace Owens defending this person and saying, "Hey, um, what crime did he commit? He organized a group. You're laying at his feet that it was a violent protest. You know, does do Republicans who organize protests for forever, whatever it may be, are they going to be responsible for the violence that occurs at the protest? Because that's what was laid at their feet in Trump's last administration for the fight over the statues and J6 and a number of other things. So uh, Trump and the Republicans are playing a very dangerous game, and they need to keep it to funding, and they need to be running to figures like Thomas Massie and using Thomas Massie as the vanguard to curtail the budget and the government spending, because also the measures that the Trump administration has taken so far are not going to do much for curtailing government spending. The tariffs, I like the tariff decisions, but I don't think that the tariff decisions are doing any like great things or numbers for American corporations and the stock market. And
Well, that's certainly probably the final thought here on what we're talking about. This continuing resolution in the shutdown of the government is certainly not going to do anything to help with what we've seen, especially what we're talking about yesterday and the continued downturn in the stock market. So we'll have to keep an eye on how these policy decisions are affecting Wall Street, Main Street. Yeah, it's definitely not going to help. And this is, I agree, it's kind of playing with fire here.
well, did you happen to see Gavin Newsom started a podcast?
No, didn't catch that one.
Yeah, so Gavin Newsom started a podcast, and he had Charlie Kirk on, of all people. I can't stand to listen to Charlie Kirk, so I didn't listen to it. But both that and Bernie Sanders is attending rallies again, and so there is movement in the Democrat Party to reform and find a new direction, and they're trying out different tacks. AOC lining up with the Anna Polina Luna, John Fetterman, who questioned the obstinacy of Democrats not to applaud some of the things that Trump brought to the address, and somebody is going to break out and find a new path for Democrats, if not by midterms, by the end of the Trump presidency, and they should be looking uh, to cracks in the Republican ideology, agenda, stronghold that Thomas Massie brings, and be thinking about how broad that appeal is, and how they can run on domestic policy, and also co-opt the MAGA movement, because the MAGA movement uh, is not historically or ideologically bound to republicanism. That was the where they wound up, because the Republicans were in the same sort of lost world that you know 8 and 12 years ago that Democrats are in now. So I'm looking for breakout and changes in the Democratic Party going forward. I think that there are broader issues that Americans agree on that aren't well articulated by the party system, but a smart politician will find them and use them. So that's all I got to say. I love Thomas Massie, and I hope that he holds true to his ideas and his values, and more politicians take the same tack.
All right. We'll see you next time on FOMO.